Hello and welcome to Mandibil. This is, I think, part 10 of my deconstruction of Bernardo Kastrup's series called Analytic Idealism, an Analytic Idealism course, as a part of what he calls Essential Foundation. And last time we were, well, I don't have to explain because you possibly saw part 9, so let's just head into it. I don't think there's something I need to add that I didn't say the last time. So it should be around here. I was thinking going into some description of some misconception about the philosophy of Baruch Spinoza. Let's just get into it, right?
To philosophy, but do not understand philosophy at all. They make this stupid claim that for Spinoza, God was the natural world.
That might be because if you don't have an idealist approach to metaphysics or understand that is more coherent and more parsimonious than a materialist, you're not going to think of the essence of as such, because you only have your experiences to go with, and that is what there is. So that's an obvious explanation from a materialist point of view of Spinoza, I would say. Now, granted, I have Baruch Spinoza's book called The Ethics, I think. I have read some part of it, but it's sort of a semi-mathematical Cartesian approach to sort of Descartes mathematics approach to ethics, and I can't follow it. It's too complicated for me, right? I'm more like, your average everyday guy where things have to make sense in my everyday world, right? And that's also a problem with many philosophers, in my opinion, that they fly into the clouds, and as they what's the word I'm looking for? As they said about Socrates, right? Blamed him for being a part in the cloud, like these playwrights in Athens who would talk of him as being in the clouds and so on. Maybe it was also just in most cases a way to ridicule him because they didn't understand his philosophy. But there's a high risk, in my opinion, that you step away from your experiences and then roam around in concepts and ideas and abstractions and models and stay there and sort of think, okay, these weird experiences, colors and shapes, they're just there to give me these important objectifications, right? Which is also maybe a notch back at Plato and Socrates, right? That there's these important things, which are the concepts, rather than your experience is of a lesser, because they are just, a particular instance of elephant, for instance, right? While the concept elephant is that never-changing thing, and therefore sort of must be more important, right? But where do these concepts come from? But they must come from some, other realm somewhere, sort of, right? So it very quickly becomes woo-woo when you step away from experience. And that's why, in my opinion, my philosophy, I constantly keep myself anchored in that reduction base, which is my experience, right? So just a sort of a side note here, right? I might add another thought you might ponder about, which is, if I was philosophizing about concepts and what might be behind experience and all these fancy things, and I just did that, I would very likely expire, right? I would, die of thirst, die of hunger, maybe thirst first, possibly, right? So, in order for me to be able to philosophize about whatever is behind experience, I need to go and use my experience to get some kind of food or some kind of, energy to keep the entropic balance at bay, right? And I need my experience to do that. And I sometimes I think that people are just sort of, that's just something I do in order to survive. I'm not philosophizing there. Oh yes, you are, right? You are really philosophizing. You're using knowledge and experience, empiricism. You're using rationality. Should I eat that rotten apple or not? And so on, right? Is it rotten? What does it mean that it's a rotten apple? Or, you know, there's a lot of philosophy there. You could say it's everyday philosophy. But if you don't do that everyday philosophy, you don't get to do this fancy in the clouds thinking about what might lie beyond your experiences, right? So I have this sort of, I wouldn't call it pragmatic because I'm not a pragmatic, but I'm sort of a realist, right? In the pure sense of the word, what is real to me is what I can experience, right? Otherwise, it's just something that is going on in the back of my head that is an additional expansion pack from which I might derive some conclusions and maybe some decisions. But these conclusions and decisions have to be carried out somehow in that reality of which I am having an experience, and rationality and reasoning and, you know, empiricism and knowledge and ethics for that matter, right? So whatever you do, at the end of the day, you are going back to that reality and having experiences about it and doing it, right? I assure you that Bernardo Kastrup was checking his computer, putting his finger on the on button, checking that the software is placed the right way and his hair is straight and, you know, his glasses, his, you know, designer glasses is put in the right way on the nose and, you know, sort of checking his experiences, right? If they are in the fashion he thinks it should be. Right? I mean, it's sort of obvious to me. But no, that's not the important thing, right? Like Plato, we have to get out of the cave, right? And go and find that truth out there. There's one thing. There's the one mind above all. And you're just, subordinate little peon being handed a presentation by the big guy outside, right?
But the material world isn't God. The material world is an image, an appearance of what God is doing. Natura naturans, nature begetting.
And then he get to mention God, right? It's sort of a Spinoza talks about God, but now he's mentioned God, right? Now it's a part of the, discourse, so to say. So it's sort of sneaked in through the back door somehow. Yeah, there's this guy, weirdo, who were grinding glasses and, whatever. I'm not trying to put down Spinoza. He possibly was a good guy, right? A decent philosopher. I mean, if you're being excommunicated by those around you, you are probably doing something right. But he died very young, and possibly because of he was grinding lenses for glasses and microscopes, whatever, I don't know, for, what are they called? Binoculars, or monocles, or who gives a give? And this glass dust possibly destroyed his lungs or something like that. So he died very young, right? Too sad, right? Sad story. What was I going with? I lost my train of thought there. Never mind, not important.
He equated God with that which underlies and is immanent in material nature. But material nature, natura naturans.
And that's what they do. Why? They place God where you can't go and look, right? If you had a box on the table and say, well, God is in the box, well, what would you do then? You will open the box and check what the hell is in there, right? But if God is, no, it's behind your experiences, right? It's on the other side of the skies. It's beyond heavens. It's outside reality and time, and you can't go and check But by the way, last night I spoke to God. Yes, I have a special channel to the big guy, right? The flying spaghetti, I mean God, right?
No, don't take my word for this. Take Spinoza's word, because he wrote a letter at the end of his life to his best friend in which he clarified precisely this point, because people already in his time...
Yes, it's very important we hear about that, because he clarified that he agrees with Bernardo Kastrup. Okay, fine. I mean, it is his presentation, so okay, that's his choice. I just find it a little worrying. He's spending so much time finding somebody else who he thinks, but it's another word they use, but it's actually the similar word as I use, so they agree with me, right? If you can't stand on your own 2 feet, right? If you can't stand on your own feet, well, this is my philosophy, this is my metaphysics, right? If you can't explain it simply, and you can't just explain it without grabbing, there's those guys over there in the 1600s and 1700s and 1800s who said this, which confirms what I think. It's like saying implicitly, my own philosophy isn't strong enough to stand on its own feet. I need to bring in some other guys to say, well, there's a lot of us, so you have to argue against all these guys also if you want to argue against me or something like that, right? It's just a pointer that he doesn't necessarily really believe what he's saying. He might be believing it, but underneath there's a sort of anxiety that his explanation isn't sufficient in order to convince you. He has to bring in some additional stuff that Spinoza or whatever and 4 or 5 basically obscure people nobody has heard about, right? Basically nobody has heard about, right? So that's just, it's a sign of weakness, in my opinion. You have to stand your own ground with your philosophy. If you can't stand your own ground, you basically do not have a philosophy, in my opinion, right? These guys might have been wrong. Just because they're using the same terms, first of all, doesn't mean they're necessarily agreeing with you. And it doesn't necessarily mean at all that their actual metaphysics behind it actually conforms with your metaphysics. And that it's right because it conforms with your... It's manipulative, right? Just be aware, I'm not saying it's necessarily completely incorrect, but it's just a sign of weakness and a lazy kind of argumentation structure, right? Nobody who is rigid and serious about their own philosophy would ever attempt bringing in 7 or 8 other just simple 2 or 3 word quotes and say they agree with me, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. If Bernardo Kastrup brought in my philosophy, which I certainly don't believe he would, and say, Mandibil, he used this term there, and he used that term there, therefore he agrees with me. I would like, hey, come on, man, you can't just cherry pick a few words here and there, right? So it's just, I can't take it seriously at all. As the further down the course we get, the less respect I have for his philosophy, to be absolutely honest, right?
We are alters of a spatially extended, unbound, universal field of subjectivity, a universal consciousness or a universal mind, if you will. So as we've seen, mental activity across the dissociative boundary can impinge on it, which evolution has leveraged in order to create.
That impinge, he says, that mind you, all that which is outside little circles within the big circles, these are dissociated objects which he is sitting in God mode looking down upon, right? I just want to remind you, this is an abstraction. Nobody can experience this, right? He doesn't say that clearly. He just, draws it and lures you in, right? Be very careful with this presentation. It is not something you can experience, right? It's only something you can piece together as an abstraction from your subjective experience, right? You can say, I've had a subjective experience. I am here in this dissociated whatever to go along with these terms, right? And then there must be somebody like me over there, which is, my partner or whatever, who is of the same kind. And then I'm drawing these things because they don't exist, so I have to draw them for you and abstract them for you, right? There's another dissociated, and we are, extrinsic experiences, intrinsic experiences of extrinsic appearances beyond the other side of the dissociation, right? Be very, 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 very careful whenever people talk about, and you might not even be aware that that's what they are referring to, but when they're talking about something outside your experience, you should have your guards up immediately and be ultra, ultra, ultra skeptical. I am at the point where I'm saying that I'm not going to listen to anything. I don't give a crap what you think is out there. You can't go there. Whatever you are using to describe that is based on some kind of experience. And that is exactly what it isn't. That's the only thing I can say about it. It is not like experience or abstractions from experiences, or, like an elephant is an objectification of your experience, right? But it's based on your experience. So whatever you can conjure up or create or anything like that is always something that is based on experience. And that's exactly what it cannot be, because it's an experience of something. It's not an experience of an experience, right? It's an experience of something different than an experience. That's why you need the experience, in my opinion, right? So it's all bullshit. It's all fucking in the clouds, conjured up, masturbatory mind fucking, right? That's all it is. Be ultra careful with this, right? I urge you, right? But the point is, it's such a tempting thing to go there, because it's a sort of a play field where you can make anything come true, right? Because there's no limitations of what could possibly be there. So you're sort of on your own, where you can, make up any fantasy you have, right? That's possibly why it's so alluring to go there and say, I guess there are, dwarfs and elves and, Gandalf and gods and, society and culture, everything, everything is out there in that. That's my fantasy world, where I can, up is down, black is white. I can get whatever I want, sort of, right? So I don't have to live in this boring experiential world. Ugh. Yuck, right?
Impinges on outer one. And what does outer one then see? Outer one sees a body. So a body is the extrinsic appearance of the dissociated mental states of outer two.
How can it be an extrinsic appearance if you have it on the inside? The body is not out there, right? The body is in there. He's drawing it outside the experience. But that representation is experiential, because it has the shape of that was on my experience panel, or the what's his name for it? I forget, the dashboard there, right? So he's confusing you. He is not. It's not coherent, right? And when you get to this level, I mean, if you get people to misunderstand this and say more than you can say, you're screwing with everything, right? You're going spectacularly wrong, right? One of the pitfalls of this is that people tend to need some kind of, let's say, priest to tell them what is out there, right? Because they're sufficiently insecure about that. Okay, I guess that sharp mind can see something on the other side, right? But I'm just a peon. I don't know nothing. So I have to go every Sunday to let the priest tell me what is there on the other side. And the priest has always found out that on the other side, there's somebody who needs your money, right? And telling you what to do, right? Oh, man, it's such a long-standing sophist trick, this, right? He might not actually be in sort of a sophist mode particularly, but he's just peddling the old the same old, right? It's that principle sort of that I have insights that you cannot possibly have. And because I have the insights, I have to tell you, in the end, ultimately, it will end up being me or somebody I know or somebody I, justify or give the green light to order people around. Because they're too stupid to understand there's something beyond their experiences, right? So it's just the first step into authoritarianism of some kind, right? And people who want to order other people around, they long for tools like this, right? I am in the know. You are too stupid. You have to be ruled, right? I mean, it's so close, right? And, lo and behold, what did Plato end up telling you about? Well, he told you about, because he's in the know about that one thing outside. He has all these stupid people, they have to be controlled, right? They have to be either soldiers or, breeders or rulers or philosopher kings or, whatever, right? And the children have to be, and there has to be a lottery about how to, organize, conception of new children, and all sorts of weird, stupid, mind-fucking, sociopathic, stupid shit in the Republic, right? So be careful. Be freaking fucking careful, right?
In other words, it's the imprint of the inner states of outer two on the transpersonal states of the environment that surrounds outers one and.
But it also has this. His presentation has this academic air to it, right? His drawings and bullet points, and it has his PhD, right? Your host is Bernardo Kastrup, PhD, right? So he must be good, right? I have no PhD. It's only the very clever people. He must have some insight that I don't have, right? Don't buy that bullshit. That's a stupid argument. It's actually a fallacy just to say I'm PhD, therefore I'm right. Right? That's stupid, right? But I'm not saying he's saying that. But he makes sure that there's 2 PhD after his name there, right? And it has this air of a symmetry in the picture. And so it looks nice. It looks like something that is clever, something like that. It's just pure fucking bullshit, right? Don't buy it, man, right? Be careful, as I say.
A common world in which outers 1 and 2 are immersed. Through this chain of impingements, outer 1 gets to see a body that is the extrinsic appearance of outer 2. Therefore, my point.
But what is that? It's sort of it bounces through this mind at large, or outer mind. Sort of it bounces sort of like this, like rocks, on a ball bouncing. What is that? It's all very sort of abstract, right? This pure abstraction, this used to describe something that you can't abstract or experience. So he's really on deep water here, right? So, okay, I think I've got my point across, right? But, I hope he starts to get into something that is more tangible, right? Maybe that's the whole point. It must not be tangible. Otherwise, I can't manipulate your mind, right? Otherwise, you will go and say, if I said, this is an elephant and he's showing you a goat, then you will say, no, that's not an elephant, right? But if he tells you, this is impingement of a larger mind outside your experience, you're like, oh, okay, I can't refute it, right? So this is what sophists do, right? They keep you in this, it wouldn't be gaslighting, but it's something along the same line, right? You are in that gray area, so to say, where you can't say, I can deny that because you're incorrect, right? And that's the whole point of this inaccessible area, that you can just abstract yourself into it and then start to say, well, I think there's this and there's that and there's the other. And people can't refute it because they can't go there, right? With their experiences. And that the experiences is what you use to confirm or deny whatever is claimed to exist. That's why we need an idea of knowledge, right? And it has to be based on experience. So, okay, I think I got my point across, right?
Can we differentiate the patients with actual DID from actors pretending to be dissociated, pretending to themselves to be dissociated? And the result was they very well could, because true dissociative processes had a unique appearance. They looked like something identifiable.
So now he's trying to use this sort of woo-woo experiment to bridge the gap between that which can't be experienced with some kind of experience, and saying somebody who believes that they experience this don't have this kind of lighting up in their brain on the scanner or whatever, while those who don't believe something and that. I mean, I have tried to listen to this a few times and it doesn't make sense to me, because what he is using, first of all, is not something he's experiencing himself, right? So he's using some third or fourth party who claims this and extends it to him, and then he uses it to argue for something you do not have access to. So we are sort of so far away from what the hell do I do if there's a cow out in my garden, right? I don't give a flying fuck about somebody who had some weirdo dissociation disorder and somebody put an electrode on their brain and told it to somebody else, describes it in a language, and Bernardo Kastrup presenting it to explain something I can't access. Who gives a flying fuck, man, right? It's like, okay, but it's still a fucking cow out there, right? It doesn't really matter what's behind the cow. What I'm experiencing is cow. And you say my experience has been optimized in order to make sure that I experience cow. So why are you focused on what the hell is behind the cow? First of all, I can't get there. And it has no influence in my philosophy to whether or not I should be experiencing cow, right? Or it might be an elephant or some dangerous animal according to my own judgment, right? So it's absolutely useless, right? It's useless. It's completely and utterly useless. It has nothing to do with your everyday experience, and that's where you are. And if you tell me that, okay, but that's not important, your everyday experience, okay, well then I know where I got you, right? Then I understand that I shouldn't do anything with you. I shouldn't associate with you. If you try to convince me I shouldn't trust my experiences, you're trying to manipulate me, right? You're trying to destroy that thing that has been developed for millions of years during evolution, right? In order for me to secure my survival.
Except that in the case of the universe, we don't need a brain scanner to look at it. We are inside the brain already. We don't need to look through a skull. We are inside. We just need to look around. If you see a cat, if you see a bird, a tree, those are the diagnostic images of dissociative processes in the universal mind. So that's what I offer to you.
I have never experienced, now you can't see the picture on this video, right? But there's this, the clusters of galaxies, big picture. Who the hell has experienced that? No, that has been filtered through a camera and computers and so on. It's no longer an experience. You can experience whatever comes out at the other end of the computer, but then it's a manipulated kind of story, right? So it's a story. It's no longer an experience. So you are even violating the understanding of what you are actually referring to. It's not an experience. Nobody has experienced. I can't experience that. When I look out, I see some blue skies and some clouds and maybe a few stars and a planet and a moon, and that's it, right? I don't see this spectacular, network, right? It's artificially created.
This is what life is. What we call life, what we call metabolism, is the extrinsic appearance of a dissociative process. And the end of life, death, is the end of that dissociative process. Lead to this very compelling impression that we are separate from the rest of the world.
The rest of the world. So you're no. You're dissociated and you have an experience, right? Your experience is not some part of the world and then there's the rest of the world. If it's another part, you're not a little slice of experience. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but if you are a slice of the experience, why is it a representation, or why is it a dashboard that is different from that outside, which you said before? It's like it's almost like you're now saying, okay, there's a big reality, and I only have, a cutout little, cookie cutter piece of that experience, which is my personal experience of that. So why does the rest of the experience then need to impinge itself on me in order to tell what's out there, right? I don't get it. I cannot follow this anymore, right? It's just becoming, maybe it's his choice of words that is so confusing to me, but it has to be simple and understandable, right? And I don't care if you have 10 PhDs, right? It has to be understandable and, useful in my everyday life. Otherwise, why would I give a flying fuck about this confusing BS, right?
How come I can't read your thoughts? I don't know what's happening in China right now. I don't know what's happening in the galaxy of Andromeda. Why not? I am part of the one universe.
How do you know there's an Andromeda galaxy? Because whatever is out there is not the same as your experience. What you're referring to is your experiential version, but that's on your inside. That's what you can know. You don't know what it is, right? You might have an idea of a galaxy, but you're not knowing what is going on there because it's far away from you, but it's still your experience, right? That galaxy is not out there. That is in there in you. Otherwise, you couldn't experience it. It seems like everything is dissolving into, everything floats. It sort of becomes, you're just in this floating mind, right? And you just have to accept what I force feed you. I'm like, okay, get the fuck away from me, right? Where's my garlic, man? Dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multiple personality disorder, and colloquially known as split personality disorder, is a mental disorder characterized by the maintenance of at least two distinct and relatively enduring personality states. The disorder is accompanied by memory gaps beyond what would be explained by ordinary memory issues. The personality states alternately show in a person's behavior. However, presentations of the disorder vary. Other conditions that often occur in people with DID include post-traumatic stress disorder, personality disorder, especially borderline and avoidant, depression, substance use disorders, conversion disorder, somatic symptom disorder, eating disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and sleep disorders. Self-harm, non-epileptic seizures, flashbacks, anxiety disorders, and suicidality are also common. So these people he is referring to using as his sort of scientific foundation are people who are severely mentally unstable, right? Oh my fucking god! No. Rationality based, well-functioning person. You can't go there. But I know some crazy people over here who have some interesting experiences. Let me go and check whether or not they can be used to explain my metaphysics. Oh man. DID is associated with overwhelming traumas or abuse during childhood. In about 90% of cases, there is a history of neglect or abuse in childhood, while other cases are linked to experiences of war. Okay, so it's people who are extremely unstable, who are reporting some interesting experiences. Yeah, right. Good luck with that, right? Good luck with that.
So the question is, in the visions and dreams of a patient with DID, do different alters interact with one another within the context of that human mind? For the analogy to hold, then I would acknowledge they would have to interact with one another, because that would be comparable to my interacting with you in the physical world, which is within the universal mind. Do you see the point? So we have to look at the visions and dreams of patients with DID. Now,
but you can't experience their dreams or their experiences. You have to rely on reporting. That's another kind of experience, which is sound or writing symbols. It's not the experience. You can't use that. You can't use, I'm claiming this, right? You have an experience of somebody claiming something that is beyond experience, right? You can't use experience to clarify that which can't be experienced. It doesn't work, mate, right? You are violating your own axioms, if you at all have any axioms. I'm talking about what I consider implicit axioms within these descriptions. It doesn't work. I don't give a flying fuck about these dissociated personalities. I'm not going to buy that. If I can't experience it, I don't give a shit, right? You can check his DID thing here. We can make sense of reality without postulating. Let's see.
Universal consciousness partaking in this dream we call the world, and we see and interact and hear one another and club one another.
So now the world is a dream. Now you're equating that world to be experience, or is it that world outside, which is also an experience that impinges on your experience, and it's all a dream? And oh man, I mean, have you ever been to a seminar or a course or a presentation, somebody doing a PowerPoint or something? If there's sort of an information overflow, at some point your mind shuts down and says, I'm not going to, this is overload. I'm only going to confuse what I already understand by keep adding more stuff to it, right? I have, a long time ago now, I have reached that point where I say, I'm not going to listen to this crap anymore, right? Because it's just, what he says gets more and more weird and abstract. And at the same time, he sort of conflates the terms used of various areas, so I'm confused about what the hell he's actually referring to and talking about. And the only thing I can say from a worst case principle point of view is he must be out to get me. He must be out to manipulate me, right? Why would he spend so much time talking about that which I can't experience if he weren't interested in manipulating me rather than helping me get around in my experience, right? He's a sort of philosophical freak of some kind, right? He's seriously dangerous, even if he doesn't know it, right? He thinks he's smart and he's out to save the world. No, mate, you are not going to save anybody with this. You're only going to create more problems than there already is, right?
Next step. So the conclusion is the following. Unlike mainstream physicalism, which requires postulating a non-given, postulating a completely abstract theoretical entity called matter, which is exhaustively defined in terms of quantities alone.
And it's just this headline, right? We can make sense. There's no we that can make sense. There's you that can make sense, and I can make sense, and that person over there and that person over there can make sense. There's no we that can make sense Be careful with we. Whenever somebody talks about we, be careful. Also when I do it, tell me that I shouldn't say we, because, and it's just, I know it's a term we use, right? What was again? This is a term that people tend to use because they're saying it's not, I don't consider it only me, but that everybody does it, right? But there is no we, right? You can say it from your point of view, and then you can axiomatically state, I extend that to everybody else. I know that you could say that that's built in the term we, but that we is being used on a grand scale in order to control people. The we is being used to force you into some association with other people without you really knowing that you're being pulled in, right? Can make sense of reality. Now, making sense may not be the best term to use, but I understand, I use that term myself also. If you have senses, that's also a term for, what potentially creates your qualia, right? Making sense, maybe it's actually a good thing to use that, because it refers to there actually have to be some sense, right? There has to be some qualia. Making sense is doing something with your qualia. But there you need qualia in order to make sense, right? So to make sense is using qualia in reality. So it's qualia-based reality is talking about make sense of reality, right? So, okay, so it must be that which you can experience, your dashboard. You can make sense of that dashboard without postulating anything beyond the given. Consciousness. I don't know what consciousness is. That's just a catch-all term that is sort of, I can't experience consciousness, right? I can't even experience my own consciousness. What color does it have? What sound does it have? It has none of these, right? So it's not something that I can make sense of, right? So postulating anything beyond the given, but you're not given anything, right? Maybe it's wrong of me to say you're not given anything. You can't state that it's being given because you don't know why you experience what you experience. Given is claiming there's some meaning to it already, and there's a reason why it is there. There is no reason given, right? I can't say there is no reason, but I can't say there is a reason either. I just can say it's unknowable. It's impenetrable. I shouldn't talk about it, right? So what he's trying to say here is, by analyzing my dashboard, I can actually say something about what is out there, right? I'm not postulating anything beyond the given, right? But he's still using the given in order to tell you. So it's a clever sophist trick, right? He's sort of saying, I'm not going beyond what I can do. But he's actually using that which he has in order to tell you about what is beyond experience. He cannot do that. He can't do that, right? You should be very careful with this, right? Be freaking careful whenever people try to establish something about what is beyond experience based on what is given, right? Be careful.
Everything else is theory. We start from experience, and ultimately that's all we have. Whatever is non-experiential is an abstraction of mind, of experience.
Exactly. That's what I've been saying for, 10 parts now. So why are you circle jerking your mind into some kind of expression of what might be out there? If all you have is your experience and your abstraction from the experience, because the abstraction is also on the inside of what you call that dissociation, right? Your abstraction doesn't suddenly become something that describes the outside. That is even more crazy than materialism, right? That's why idealism has such a bad rap. It's because materialist is not anchored in their experiences. They're anchored in their abstractions. And then they say the abstractions is out there, right? Oh, man. Okay, so good luck with trying to convince materialists that this is superior, right? You have no freaking chance in hell, right? it's completely useless, right? It's so dangerous, in my opinion. At least materialists are peer-reviewed things that has to be based on empiricism, which is based on your senses or your qualia, right? Or your idea of knowledge. Okay, they misunderstand it and think what they experience is that actual thing out there. But that's not as big a problem as you thinking that your abstractions from your experience is out there, right? That is seriously shit, right? It's never going to float this. It's completely mental madness.
So analytic idealism doesn't postulate anything other than experience. The only thing it postulates is experience goes beyond the limits of our personal minds. It's like saying that the earth continues beyond the visible horizon, which is
I just remember he hasn't clarified a reduction base yet, right? He has fabulated, basically telling you how everything works, your experiences, your abstractions, and what is beyond experience, and telling how it interacts with each other, and everything, the spaghetti monster is out there, and so on. But by the way, no, I don't need to elaborate on my, reduction base. No. You can't anchor what I'm saying in anything yet. My reduction base hasn't been illuminated to you, right? No, you don't need that, little people, right? Just accept all my weird abstractions as the gospel, right?
In other words, until my horizon, the horizon of my personal mind, all I have is experience. So I will postulate that beyond the horizon, there is more experience, which is not my, as an individual mind, a dissociated.
You see? So what he's doing, the trick is, there's something inside your dissociation, right? That is mind. And that is some kind of experience, right? That experience just extends through your experience. So there's also just experiences on the other side. So he hasn't brought in something new that he has to explain. He's just using what he already has and just extended it to everywhere, right? Problem solved, right? It is like saying, what he does is, if you have been living in like I'm sitting in my living room here, right? My fantastic, high level, interior design here, right? Hey! We were discussing interior design on the Discord server yesterday, me and some of the other guys, right? So I remind you, check in the Discord and have a good laugh and a few jokes and some serious philosophical discussions about this, that, and the other. So you're more than welcome. But if I had been living in this box here all my life, and all I had was the experience of this box here, right? Then I could make, there were no windows, so to say. This is an analogy or metaphor, right? But in order for you to get to my understanding of how he violates his axioms here, if it was sort of a cube and there was nothing anywhere, right? But this cube, there are walls and, right? And then I say, there might be something on the other side of these walls. Why wouldn't there, right? It feels like I can walk toward that wall and, something like that. But then I stop because I can't go any further. But there might be something out there, right? And I just say, well, I guess there's living room everywhere. It's full of living room outside, right? So if I'm saying this is made of living room, then there's just living room everywhere, right? Problem solved, because I haven't said there's something different outside. And if they're different, well, then people would ask, well, then what is it, right? No, what he does is, he's just saying, it's just living room everywhere. Then people saying, well, God, then he doesn't have to explain it, because he has already explained it by saying what he has access to is living room. It's just extending that to the area he doesn't have access to, right? So problem solved. There's no dualism, right? It's just this singularity of mind everywhere, right? But the deeper point is, mind is an abstraction, right? He is now dissociated, to stay with his term, from a reduction base, right? unless he uses mind as a reduction base, he cannot get to experience now, because mind is some kind of abstraction from an experience. You can't go from an abstraction back into experiences, not in a metaphysically argumentative way, because experiences always come before abstractions. So you can't start an abstraction and go back to experiences when you're trying to explain things which already basically come from your experience, as he says. So he's just removed the carpet under himself. Now he can't go and explain anything. He doesn't have a reduction base. And if he says my reduction base is mind, well, bullshit, because mind is an abstraction from some kind of experience, right? So he just cut himself off from an explanation. So he's basically told you my metaphysics is pure bullshit. It's absolutely and utterly bullshit, right? Okay.
Experiences of the same kind, in the sense that this stuff is also experiential. It's an extrapolation of what I know to exist, because I have direct...
Know to exist. You haven't done epistemology, right? This is a metaphysics course. So why do you talk about what you know? Because metaphysics has to be settled before you can talk about knowledge. And you also have to establish, you have to present your epistemology before you start to talk about knowledge, right? This is such an amateurish. It's just like, I mean, I don't know what to say really, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about, basically, right? He's illuminating his shortcomings in understanding what he's the full scale of philosophical endeavor, right, or inquiry. He's using the term knowledge in metaphysics. That's a violation of fundamental philosophical inquiry, right? So it just goes to show that he doesn't know what he's doing, right? He throws around words without understanding that what he's doing is actually a violation of what he's doing, right? It's about he is illuminating shortcomings or insights or understandings of what he's doing. Or what he's doing here is a violation on some other part of philosophy which he hasn't done or illuminated anyone about in any rigid manner like this one, right? It's just amateurish. It's very, very amateurish, right? So, okay.
Beyond the horizon, there is more experience, which is not my, as an individual mind, a dissociated outer, but it's still experiential. Mainstream physicalism, on the other hand, says until the horizon it's experience, but beyond.
As I said, he just extends experience beyond experience and saying, well, there's just more experience out there, right? So for some reason, that outside experience has to impinge itself in order for you to get that experience you have inside, right? He doesn't explain that. Why are you dissociated from all of the experience, right? Why are you a little subset of experience where the outside experience has to impinge itself on you so you have a bigger experience, but then you are having an experience of experience? You're not solving the problem actually, right? You're just calling everything experience now, even though you're dissociated from the rest of experience. You're not solving any problems here. You're just making it sound like you are extending what you already have into that which you have no access to, in order to explain it, right? You're not explaining anything, but you are making it more complicated, right? So it's not solipsist, this, right? It's the opposite, in my opinion, right? I wouldn't, if I was working in a company of some sort, right? And a guy came to me who was a materialist and said, well, I've been working in the field of science for many years, and I'm a materialist. I don't see why there could be some part of my experience that I can't access, or there's something that is beyond my experience but I can access. And says, well, okay, fine, I understand where you're coming from. I might not agree with you, but I understand where you're coming from. And then Bernardo Kastrup would come and present this crap to me, right? And I would say, okay, Mr. Crazy Boy, right? Get out of my fucking office. I'm going with the materialist, right? Wouldn't you? If you were hiring somebody to work in the reality, would you hire this guy, or would you hire some materialist, right? Be honest. There's no doubt in my mind, even if I'm an idealist, right? Fundamentally an idealist. I'm not going with his story here, right? But, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind I would go with the materialist, because I understand where they're coming from. This guy, who is on the same field, sort of fundamentally about idealism, I don't understand him, right? He's fucking crazy. I wouldn't have him near my other workers, right? He's a crazy man, right? He's going to confuse everybody and make them insecure, and saying, I know what's out there and you can't access it, or maybe you can, but maybe you just have to open your mind or something like that. Get the fuck out of my face, right?
So how do we explain everything in terms of experience? The inanimate...
Why do you need to explain everything, right? Why do you need to explain it? Why do you think it's so important to explain that which you can't explain? What's the drive? What's the meaning in it, right? What's the rationality here? If it's not something I can experience, you can't go and tell me you should experience that which you can't experience. There must be some other agenda here, right? It must be some kind of religious or woo-woo or something about connecting some dots that people usually don't want to connect, right? And I can only see one explanation, and my background understanding of where he's coming from and his sort of childhood and prehistory, what's it called, right? That his mommy was a Catholic, Brazilian or something like that, and his father was a scientific Dane, right? It's like a match made in hell or something like that. She must have been good looking, right? She's crazy, but she's hot. He's trying to connect these two, right? He's trying, and as far as I understand, his father died when he was like 10 years old or something along that. You might correct me, right? So the rest of the time, his mother has been sort of screwing with his mind, right? Because that's what these crazy bitches do and particularly when they're religious, right? They're screwing with your mind, right? They're gaslighting you, they're manipulating you, they're using all sorts of manipulative trick in order for you to stay in the fold, right? Stay with the bullshit so they can get around, keep going around with their bullshit, because they know that they have to ostracize you as a child. They have to excommunicate you if you don't go along, right? That's what these crazy people do. She is going to stay with the crazy people, not with you, right? So what he's trying to do, he's trying to connect the dots so he can combine crazy Catholics with a materialist scientist, right? Somehow connect the dots, right? That's what I see. This is my opinion. This is my statement. This is the sort of the worst case principle I'm working from. This is what he's out there to do. He doesn't care whether or not you have a good an analysis of your personal experiences. No. He's on a mission to connect his personal dots, right? That's all it is, in my opinion, right? Otherwise, why would you risk becoming looked at like a crazy idiot online with all this bullshit if there wasn't a higher purpose, like connecting the dots so mommy won't be mad at me, right?
These are our dials indicating to us, providing information to us.
Providing information. So when does it become information, right? How do you know that it's information? You are reifying, or what the hell it's called, your experience. It's also like, I experienced that, therefore it's information. That doesn't follow. It doesn't follow. What is information about red, right? What is information about smell, right? What's information? There's no information there, right? You can say it's information, but what magical step made you able to classify this as information? Because information must be something that carries some kind of value or some kind of preconceived or a priori understanding. It doesn't follow from your experience. It doesn't follow. It's bullshit, right?
Was about underlying experiential states that are substanding, that are the substance of reality, standing behind appearances. They are the ousia of the universe, which presents itself to us in the form of what in the dashboard of Niles.
Okay, so what you're basically saying, there's a God outside, mommy and her God is outside presenting ideas to your daddy who's inside, and this dissociative border is what you're trying to penetrate so mommy and daddy can meet, right? Yes. I love when mommy and daddy can... That's what it is, right?
Appears as the night sky. In the body, we are just dissociated alters of the...
And just, we are just, right? It's a figure of speech maybe, but a slightly Freudian slip into you are subordinate to the big mind, right? The big mind is impinging on you, right? I've been out there with a big mind, and it's being impinging his summer vacation photos onto your dissociation on your dashboard, right? But it's not the real mind, but it's mind out there, but it's the different mind, or it's an experience, or it's a dissociative impinging the dashboard, experience, universal, knowledge of everything mind. Oh my God. Yes, of course, this is parsimonious. Right? It's so parsimonious and simple, I can't get over it, right? No, what I'm so confused now that I'm saying, it's like, I'm not going to say anything. Let's keep going.
Of this universal mind. Now notice that all of these are experiences. The substance of the world are transpersonal experiential states to which we as alters have no direct access, but they are experiential. What do we
don't have no direct access, but they are experimental. You're contradicting yourself. That which I have no access to, I'm going to describe now, right? It's like, what the... What are you smoking, man, right?
Moreover, with one mind, which avoids all kinds of complicated philosophical problems if we were to postulate fundamentally different minds, all we need is to leverage a natural process that we know to exist.
Yeah, but sound is not the same as color, is it? Right? You're calling it an experience because it's a part of that screen you're talking about, but it's not of the same kind. That might be the reason why there are these two different kinds of sense data or qualia, right? So they're different. Colors are not the same as sounds, right? It's not the same as a smell and so on, right? They're different. Why are they different if it's only of one kind out there, right? Isn't it confusing that which is of one kind has suddenly been split up to 5 different kinds of informations, which you then combine back into one kind? Isn't that confusing? If it's one kind out there, and it becomes 5 different kinds that has to be combined into some kind of abstraction that is of one kind with his mind, or whatever, right? That seems like a ridiculous, bad way of trying to one kind, 5 kinds, and then one kind, right? That one kind or the other side of the 5 kinds is very likely not going to be the same as the one kind that is on the other side before those experiences, right? Because they were split up into 5 different experiences, of which you don't even know if that's sufficient in order to describe whatever it is out there, right? So you didn't have that one kind on the other side. You only have the 5 senses that you combine into one kind called mind, and then saying that one kind is out there beyond those 5 different kinds of experiences. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. It'll never fly, this. It's just the clouds. It's just mind babble, right? It's just loose imagination, right? Abstractions. I'm walking around in my clouds, and trying to combine the dots as I think they should be combined, right? Doesn't work.
Now let's go back to how we started. We started with 3 empirical observations, not the simplest theoretical interpretations, but 3 empirical observations that were undeniable. Number 1, brain function correlates with inner experience. How does analytic idealism account for that? Well, we just said that a body, which includes the brain and the brain's activity, is what the dissociated...
All 3 basic observations about reality. I don't have 3 basic observations. I have 5 different types of qualia, right? And maybe shape could be a 6th, which I think is derived from sight, right? Before you get to an objectification, like elephant, right? There were no 3 basic observations. There are 5 different qualia. That's what you have to work with. Everything you have here is just mind fuck, right? Just little squares and little circles and little pointers and on a PowerPoint show or whatever, right? This is not reality, right? These are just abstractions. It doesn't work. I can't use this, right? It's dysfunctional, right?
The activity of an outer looks like when observed across one or more dissociative boundaries. Therefore, brain activity is part of what inner mental activity looks like when observed from across the respective dissociative boundary. And then, of course, it correlates. The image of a phenomenon correlates with the phenomenon it is an image of. Of course. No, your image in the mirror...
No. Now you're fabulating that if I experience a cow, there is an unknown object beyond my experience which is responsible for cow, and when I see a cow next time or beside it, there is a similar kind of object there than the first object behind, which I don't have access to, that is identical conceptually, maybe sort of correspondence problem with idealism, right? Is when I experience cow, is there something that corresponds to cow on the other side every time, the same kind of correspondence every time I experience cow, right? Well, one way to refute that is if you experience something and suddenly it disappears, right? Or switches into be another objectification. And I have mentioned a few times in my philosophy, once when I was walking in the woods and I saw a fox, and 3 seconds later it was a dog, right? It wasn't a fox anymore, right? Or once when I was riding in my car and the car in front of me, there was a mirror, right? And then when 2 minutes went by, I was sort of looking around, and then I looked again and I saw there was no mirror. There was nothing. There was just the rest of what was there when I experienced the mirror the first time. Then mirror disappeared, but I experienced mirror, right? I can't tell you why. I can't tell you it's right or wrong, or just because it changed, it meant that there was no mirror there. Because if I experienced that mirror and then took a turn or got off the highway, I would still be thinking there was a mirror there. That I wouldn't have no reason to change my experience of mirror, right? So is there something corresponding on the other side? How would you know? But you can't know, right? That's the whole point of the exercise, is to say you can't go there. You can't know anything. And it doesn't really matter, because what you have is your experience, and that's what you should be focusing on. How do I best get around in my experience, right?
Correlates with you because it's an image of the phenomenon you call you. So of course brain function correlates with inner experience, because brain function is what inner experience looks like when observed from across a dissociative boundary. I will repeat because this is very important. Brain function correlates with inner experience because brain function is what
You can't talk about brain function. That's an abstraction, right? Why did you get to talk about brain functions? One of those based on experiences? Well, you haven't said anything about reduction base being based on experiences, right? You're saying, as far as I can hear, that the reduction base is mind. Right? You are living in the castles. You're living in the in the cloud castles, right? You are walking around in your abstractions and thinking that you are referring to reality. No, you're not. Your abstractions is not a part of reality, right? I mean, it might depend on what you define as reality, but in this sense, I think you're talking about your experiences, right? Okay, so very, very confusing this.
Second observation, we all seem to share the same world. Do we, under analytic idealism?
Well, why do you get to say that? Just because I tell you I have you hear the sound of my voice that says, I have a mind, I have experience. Therefore, you know I have experience. No. You have the experience of me making sounds, which you interpret as me saying or claiming I have experience. But that's not the same as you knowing I have experience. No, all you have is your own experience, right? You can make an axiom where you say, I am going with this axiom, which is stated as I am going with the understanding that other individuals, when I experience this kind of object, which I call an individual, they have the similar kind of experience as I have, right? That you can do, but you can't just say, well, it's obvious, right? That's bullshit. That's bullshit philosophy. It's not rigid, right? There has to be axioms that I can agree to or say I'm not agreeing, right? And when I'm not agreeing with your axiom, I don't have to go any further in your philosophy, right? That's what you need axioms for, so people know when they're dealing with something you're just claiming, right?
Of course we do. We share this ocean.
Oh, of course we do. That's a very good argument. Of course we do. Yes, of course. It's so obvious, right?
Of transpersonal endogenous mental state.
This ocean. Oh, so now we're staying in metaphor land still, right? The ocean with the ripples on it, right? Oh, you like those analogies. They're so flexible. You don't have to refer to any experience. You can jump around in your abstraction as you see fit because they are abstractions. They can be used for anything you want because you don't have to refer to a color in anything specific or a objectification like elephant, right?
So alter N has its dashboard of dials here, its perceptual screen. Alter 2 has its dashboard. Alter 1 has its dashboard. And the dials in each of these dashboards are consistent with the dials on the other dashboards. Why? Because they are fed by the same thing. They are fed with information from the same surrounding and...
But if they can't be the same thing if there are three different arrows, right? But how do you know it's the same thing? It can't be the same if it's... Yeah, I can buy one banana and then buy another banana. But it's not the same banana, right? Conceptually, it might be the same, but it's still not the same thing, right? So how does it split? Does it clone itself to make sure that all impingement is identical, right? I don't buy this shit, right? It's just pure speculation, right? It's simply confirmation bias of some kind.
And that world presents itself to us on our dashboard of dials as what we call...
Okay, I have a sense that it keeps going in the same. It presents itself. He has said that 20 times now, right? And it does nothing presents itself. That's not that. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you can't say it does, right? You're making either or statements about that which you do not have access to, right? You can't do that. You shouldn't do that, right? It's a violation of what you can possibly say about that which you do not have access to. So, yeah. Actually, I'm actually getting a little tired of deconstructing this, right? I have lost so much respect for what he's saying, and it's confusing, and it feels manipulative and lazy and all sorts of shortcomings, right? That makes it less enjoyable to deconstruct, in my opinion.
Finally, the third observation, the laws of nature are independent of our desires. I can't change the world simply by wishing it to be different. Is that accounted for by analytic idealism? Of course it is.
Be different, the wishing itself, but you can make some decisions and you can act accordingly, right? It seems like even if you reject, free will, you are doing this exactly thing when you were supposed to plan. You were doing it, or very similar, right, or very close to it, right? You might have been 5 minutes late or something like that, but who gives a shit, right? You are making this presentation in your own image, so to say, right? In the way you want to do it. It didn't just turn into a chicken or something like that. It behaved as you possibly foresaw it should behave and be presented in your presentation and so on, right? So you are changing the world. At least you are manipulating it to become in a certain fashion that is in concordance with a choice, a preconceived choice of what to do in the world, right? So I'm also not buying that you can't wish. You can wish, wish, just sitting there, wish upon a star or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about imagining choices and acting accordingly. You can do that to some extent, right?
The physical appearance of the mental dissociative boundary is the surface of our body. By manipulating that surface, in other words, by moving our arms, moving our legs, we can perform work and change the world outside. But that doesn't happen through
Okay. So we can change the world outside.
The dissociative boundary. It happens by means of the dissociative boundary. When you change the configuration of the dissociative boundary by moving your arms and legs. And then
So what? But that doesn't. Whatever goes on inside you manifests somehow by how you reconfigure the borderline. My arm is waving. Okay, I'm changing the air molecules, and if there's if there's an ostrich near, I'm going to slap it on the neck or something like that, right? Okay, I'm acting in the world, but the wish that came didn't come from the experience. It's not the experience that is the wish. The wish is going on inside me. Yes, I understand. But the wish becomes potentially a choice, which potentially can be translated into an action, to the best of my understanding. And this translation is what we would call some kind of free will, right? Okay, fine. But that's just a reconfiguration of the borders of what is this dissociative border. It doesn't change anything about the interpretation of what might be outside according to your understanding of this outside.
All right. This is it. We've come to the end of this marathon. I hope it has been informative to you. In the next module, we are going to get into all the empirical evidence for analytic idealism, from foundations of physics and from neuroscience of consciousness, mainly. Now, a lot of people try to motivate a departure from mainstream physicalism based on so-called paranormal phenomena. Do I take these phenomena seriously? Yes, I do take certain paranormal phenomena seriously because they have been investigated under very good protocols by very good researchers working in academia. And
yes, of course, they're very good researchers because they go along your dots, right? So they're very good. But, Richard Dawkins is an idiot, right? He's an idiot. Sam Harris is an idiot. He might be, but, that's sort of the level of sophistry. Like those researchers going along what I'm saying is very good, high quality researchers making great papers, right? But Richard Dawkins is an idiot. I'm superior. Oh, I think I'll stop here, right? And part 5, I don't know how long it is. I think there are 7 parts in this series, incredibly, right? Okay, empirical evidence for analytical idealism. Okay, he doesn't say there's empirical evidence for what is beyond experience, right? That would be self-contradictory. But empirical evidence is empirical is epistemology, right? That's an understanding of what you have access to, or what you have to base
So I do take them seriously.
your claims of knowledge on, and that would be empirical evidence, right? That's the only thing that can be knowledge. But you haven't done epistemology, right? And you haven't defined what is knowledge. So why are you talking about empirical evidence for something that is an analytical idealism, which is metaphysics? And metaphysics has to be established before you attempt to venture into defining knowledge by doing epistemology. So this is complete garbage philosophical rhetoric. It's nonsense. It's nonsensical, right? It's nonsensical. And it's actually incredible that he doesn't understand that. Apparently he doesn't understand it, right? Otherwise he wouldn't write that. It's nonsense, right? So, okay, we are at 1 minute and about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I think that that's enough for. And I don't want to delve into his outro here. So I don't consider it necessary. I will take a look at the part 5 and see if I think I need to delve into it, or just leave it to you to ponder about what he says there. If I think there's something I need to do, I might jump through it quickly to get to there's a part with criticism about analytical idealism, and I think that would be more important for me to get to, because, as I say, empirical evidence for metaphysics, it's a stupid idea. It's in a nonsensical, lazy kind of misunderstanding of what you're doing in philosophy, right? And the structure of it. So, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Otherwise, see you in the next one.